My name's Irena and I'm a compulsive eater. And I'd like to talk about my experience, strength and hope. And it's scary, but it's a joy to be invited to do this sort of main share because it reminds me of just how crazy I really was and how much things have changed. And I find it so easy to become discouraged at times with how far I've got to go and forget just how far I've come. So this is a lovely reminder for me. I think I've always been too fond of food. Some of my fondest memories as a child were exactly what was served on Christmas Day and other key food-related occasions. And I remember those very, very vividly, so it's clear where my attention was going. But food only really got out of control when big emotions were involved for me, because I'm also very bad at dealing with big emotions. And the two key points in my life when that happened were, first of all, in my last year of primary school, aged 10 to 11. My best friend left, went to another school, and it's about the age when kids discover difference. And I have a very foreign name, and I used to get beaten up and called all sorts of very nasty names. And being a very bright kid, I realised that if I didn't go into school and didn't leave the house, I didn't get beaten up. So that's what I did. I stayed at home, and I stayed at home with the biscuit tin. And I was convinced that if I ate them in threes, my mum would never notice that they were going. And this has to be absolute nonsense because, she must have been buying about a lorry load a week. And I ate, and I ate, and I ate. And the problems didn't go away. And towards the end of that academic year, it was very rare in those days to see videos of yourself. But for some reason, I was in the background of a video and I saw myself and I had ballooned. I was enormous. And I was so shocked because I'd got no idea at all. And that's when I went on my first diet. Yeah, again, I was that sort of kid. I put myself on a diet. It was a very sensible diet. It counted points. I ate lots of healthy food. I lost lots of weight. And when I arrived in senior school, I was a perfectly normal weight. All fantastic. Of course, teenage girls are not best known for being good with food. And throughout my teenage years, I was convinced that I was enormous when I was really quite skinny. I look back on a few of the photos from those times, and I am very, very scraggy and wearing very baggy dresses. And the effect is, who put a tent on this stick insect? So, I wasn't eating normally. I wasn't living normally, but I was thin. And for the next few years, I stayed pretty thin, on and off diets. I think the biggest I ever got was top end of the size 12s, bottom end of the size 14s, one size down for American colleagues. Not a big deal. I thought it was terrible at the time. At stages, I smoked like blazes so as not to eat. I certainly went on all sorts of diets. But again, things didn't get really crazy until much later when I ended up in a very, very violent relationship. Um, he had all sorts of problems and he used to beat me up to the extent that at one point I really did think he was going to kill me. I thought, this is it. And I couldn't deal with it emotionally, so I ate. And I ate, and I ate, and I ate. And I went from a size 10 to way over the top end of a size 24. Probably bursting out of it. I put on 8¾ stone. I didn't quite double my body weight, but close to it. I was enormous. When I flew, I had to have extension leads for the seatbelt. Going to the theatre was just so embarrassing because
the first 5 minutes.
Thank you, Rona. I could barely fit in a seat. And I could no longer diet. I had lost the ability to diet. All diets just went out of the window out of a few hours. And I would come out of the shops with bags and bags and bags of sweet food and start binging after breakfast. And a friend was in OA. And every few months she would tell me about OA, and I would say, that sounds great. That sounds fantastic. That sounds brilliant. It sounds just for me. I don't have time. I've got a very busy professional job. I'm a single parent. When would I have time to go and sit in a church hall once a week? Can't faff around like that. It's lovely. It's not for me. And one day I got what's called in program the gift of desperation. And on the same day I signed up for OA. I asked her to take me the next day and for a pay and weigh. And the pay and weigh happened to be, I think, a few hours before the first OA meeting. And while I was standing in the queue for the pay and weigh to be weighed, I got chatting with the woman behind me and I said, oh yeah, I've just joined this and tomorrow I'm going to an OA meeting. And the woman behind me said, oh, Overeaters Anonymous, yes. Do you know that's the only thing that's ever worked for me with weight loss? And I thought, why on earth are you in the queue behind me for this pay and weigh if OA is the only thing that has ever worked for you? I didn't last long in the pay and weigh. I did last long in OA. Went to my first meeting, and at that first meeting, I put down sugar. Sugar was my ultimate binge food. I would go mad for sugar, and I gave it up with absolutely, no side effects, nothing. And I don't know how that happened. That's absolutely a God job because I couldn't have done that by myself. And I wish I could tell you that from that day, I also got abstinent, but I didn't. This disease is very cunning, baffling, and powerful. And if you locked me up in a room and the only thing to eat was table mats, I could binge on table mats. I really, really could. The things I could binge on are incredible. My disease found other ways. And the only good thing I did, because for my first few years in program, I slipped and I slipped and I slipped and I lost my abstinence and I lost my abstinence. The only good thing I did, the only thing I got right was I kept turning up to meetings. And I was in a meeting then, a face-to-face meeting with a lot of recovery. Everyone seemed to be absolutely perfect and have no problems other than me. And I would sit in the meeting feeling so depressed and such a failure. And then in that particular meeting, we read all the traditions and someone would read tradition 3. And tradition 3 is the only requirement for OA membership is a desire to stop eating compulsively. And I breathed out a sigh of relief and thought, I can stay. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I'm not doing it as well as these people. I can stay. This is the meeting for me. And eventually, like a pickle in pickle juice, I finally got pickled. It clicked. It clicked. I actually started working the steps properly. Of course, I hadn't been doing that up to that time. I actually started communicating with my sponsor on a regular basis. And the amazing thing is, because I was putting work in, it started to work for me. And what a difference. I lost plenty of the weight, not all of it, still got to work on that. I started being able to move about and do exercise, which was an absolute joy, but most importantly, my head started to get sane. I eat 3 meals a day with nothing in between. There are various red foods I cannot touch and I do not touch. And I've now got to the state where I can have them in the house and not notice them. And I never thought that would happen in a million years. You know, my daughter has them, we have them for particular festivities, and they're just not my food. And I don't see them. Before programme, you could have trusted me with £1 million. Give me £1 million of your money. I would look after it. I would worry about it for you. I would take care of it for you. You come back, I'd give you back your £1 million. If you left me with some of my binge foods for 3 minutes, you'd arrive back to find my face all smeared with food and me going, I'm terribly sorry, I'll buy you another one. Now you could leave me with what were my binge foods and I would hand them back to you because I'm just not interested. My disease is still cunning, baffling, and powerful, and it introduces other foods to me that it says are all right, and sometimes they're really not for me. And often I resist putting these down, but I do. The worst a couple of years ago were what I think of as substitutes, things that don't contain sugar but look like they contain sugar, and they're going to be all right because they don't contain sugar. But my head is still a bit mad about those, and they're not all right for me, and I managed to put them down. One thing that is lovely now is I can look back at some of the mad things I did and think I don't do them anymore. And I did make notes of a few of them. I didn't have time to prepare this, but I did have time to say a little prayer to my higher power, which is something I do too rarely. So it was a joy to do that. And some of the crazy things were traveling with food. I live in one city and work in another, about an hour, 15 minutes away if the roads are clear, driving. A bit more if you take the train. And I used to take the train. And between these two major cities, I always used to make sure I travelled with half a ton of food in my rucksack because I might get hungry and that would be terrible. And my rucksack would be absolutely full of food. And honestly, there was food on the train, there was food at both stations, there was food on the way to the first station, there was food on the way out of the second station. You've never seen more food for sale. If I genuinely got hungry, I could have bought anything at any stage. I still travelled with half a ton of food in my rucksack. And the resentments I used to have. When I came to step 10, I thought, I'm a nice person. I don't really have resentments. But my goodness, I used to have so many resentments and imaginary resentments. If I didn't like someone, I would have conversations with them in my head where I made up things they might say that I could resent. And I would be so angry and wound up about these. Now, every day, I do a 10th step call, and I have to do a 10th step call. So if I start resenting something, I can talk about it straight away to another person, and I can talk about what my part in it is. Again, back when I was in the food, if something went wrong, my head could make up so many reasons why it was nothing to do with me, why I wasn't to blame at all in any way, because I'm never to blame for anything. And now I am able to say, that's a fair cop. And do you know, it makes me feel so relieved and so good and in a way so powerful because I have defeated something scary with the help of my higher power. Things aren't perfect now. I have mobility difficulties and health difficulties. I'm on medication. That means you put on weight.
1 minute to go.
Thanks, Bruna. But the wonderful thing is, and these are challenging for me, and I sometimes end up in a lot of pain, but I don't eat on them. And back in the day, that would have been my first, second, and last retreat for anything. I would have eaten and eaten and eaten, and it doesn't occur to me to do that now. I think on my OA journey, I am not at the state of perfection, It's like travelling from one end of the country to the other. I'm going from Land's End to John O'Groats, and I'm probably in Crewe, about halfway there. And sometimes I will take a wrong turning in Crewe. And when I do, I know the thing to do is not turn round and go straight back to Land's End. It's to find where I am in Crewe and find a map or find a fellow or work the programme and hand it over to my higher power so I can then find the right road. Thank you for allowing me to share. I really hope you've heard something that is useful to you. It's been a privilege to talk to you.